Hi, and this is episode 105 of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi. I have a super fun and possibly career-changing episode for you today. Whenever you've thought about changing careers, have you ever found yourself saying things like, well, I've already put in so many years in the job, and I don't want to waste my PhD. I did the hard part, so I might as well continue. If that sounds like you, then you might actually be default planning your career instead of being on an intentional and purpose-driven career path. Look, we all have a vision of our ideal life, whether you've taken the time to articulate it or not. One where you're solving or have solved some sort of problem or unmet need. That could be something that you're personally experiencing, or it's going to help your family or the larger community at the local level or globally even. As scientists, our work inherently has a global impact, and we work so hard and do what we do because we want to help people. We want the time that we spend working to be meaningful, that for our time here on Earth to be for a purpose. Well, is that the path that you're on? Is your current job actually part of your life's purpose and vision? Or are you feeling stuck on a career path just because it's easier to continue the way you have been? Well, I'm going to be guiding you through a career planning journal prompt so that we can do a powerful sort of gut check on your current job. And you're definitely going to want to grab your journal and get ready to tap into some inner wisdom. Are you looking for a way to blend success and motherhood without losing sight of who you are? I get it. I've been there too. Hi, I'm Anoki, a PhD researcher, business owner, and homeschooling mom of 2 boys. As your life coach, I help moms like you create a life you love at home and at work. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed, overscheduled, and overlooked, and want a clear roadmap to a balanced life, a meaningful career, and finally feeling like yourself again while being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this journey to create the life you truly desire, it's time to rediscover your dreams and achieve your ambitious mom life. Before we get started, I want to remind you that I would love to hear from you. This podcast is all about figuring things out together. So if you have a burning question about balancing your ambitions and motherhood, well, I'm here to help with Figure It Out Fridays, our mini episodes where I answer your questions. Send me your questions through the links in the show notes. Leave me a voice memo on our contact page or email me directly at hello@solveformom.com. I promise to bring my experience, support, and evidence-based answers to help you navigate your ambitious mom life. If we're going to be spending our time away from our kids, then we want that time to be going towards meaningful work. Work that has a visible impact, where we're helping people, we're solving problems, and doing science that matters. So for you to be engaged in meaningful work and to be developing a fulfilling career, that means that the external outcomes of your work, the results of your work, need to align with your inner motivation. Our inner motivation is basically what drives you at your core. And so when it comes to our careers and work, these are the issues that you care deeply about, the impact that you want to make, the problems that you genuinely want to solve, and also the values that guide your decisions. Our external output is the actual work that you're doing day to day, the projects that you're tackling, the problems your job is being asked to solve, and where your energy is going. So you want to have an alignment between that inner motivation and your external output. When these two align, your work is going to feel purposeful and energizing, but when they don't, even if you are successful professionally and you're really progressing, mastering a high level of skills and technical expertise, when they don't match, you still feel extremely disconnected and unfulfilled. So for example, if you're internally driven to solve global health problems, but your current role focuses on optimizing profit margins for medical products that don't serve that mission, then there's a misalignment that's going to create tension for you. So I will give you a personal example. There's actually 2 pivots that I made early on in my career that speak towards this tension that's created between a mismatch with my internal motivation and my external output. My PhD is in molecular pathology, and I was working in a virology lab and studying some very early events in a viral infection and how it hijacks the host cellular machinery. The work that I did was extremely fascinating and very important in the world of DNA viruses. However, I spent 6 years essentially studying 3 specific proteins. And at some point down the road, I got introduced to the field of epidemiology, which is looking at the distribution of diseases in whole populations. When I had committed myself to a life of scientific research, my thought was that I wanted to help as many people as I could. And it started to become clear to me that in my molecular world, where I'm not even looking at patients, I'm working at the level of subcellular systems, and in particular, 3 specific proteins, that seems so far removed from actually helping people that it became very attractive to me to switch over to epidemiology, where I was working with data points that ranged from hundreds to millions of people, and it was easier to see how my results would translate over to actually helping patients. The other pivot I made early on is that in my PhD program, we were strongly encouraged and basically expected to go down a career path in academia. As a grad student researcher, I was working in a university lab, and so I had plenty of faculty members to interact with and to observe, essentially seeing what their life was like in academia. Again, when I thought about my purpose and wanting my work to be as close to helping patients as possible, when I started to learn more about careers in industry and seeing how you're working much closer to the medical products and making sure the right products are getting to the right patients, that just seems so much more appealing to me and in line with my purpose. Now, I've had many other pivots since then, but often these pivots are really guided by my self-awareness of a mismatch between what my purpose and internal motivations are versus how I'm spending my time when I'm doing my professional work. And this is why I'm saying that it's important for you to examine your current job and to see if that supports your broader vision. It's just so critical, and you really want to ensure that your daily actions and the results of your work are actually moving you towards the problems that you're meant to solve, that you want to solve. Not just the problems that happen to be in front of you, but ones that actually serve your mission. And that's why your challenge for this week is to grab your notebook or journal and answer this one question in a short journaling session. And I want you to ask yourself, does my current role align with the problems that I most want to solve in the world? Or am I just following the path of least resistance? So just write for 10 or 15 minutes. Don't edit yourself. Just be really free with your thoughts. And then it can help later to reflect on what you've written. Underline 1 or more sentences that really feel like raw honesty to you. That is going to be your starting point for a more intentional career plan. And this exercise is going to help you clearly see whether your current job actually belongs in your life vision or whether you're default planning. High-achieving moms in science, tech, and research fields face so many unique challenges. And we dedicate a significant amount of time acquiring our degrees and building our expertise. We have overcome barriers as women in science, and that alone seems like something that should lock us into this singular path. And that's why every other option seems so unthinkable, just given how much we've overcome to get here. And so there's actually a couple of reasons why we might end up default planning. For one, just considering or acknowledging the possibility that we might want to switch jobs or change careers because you've invested so many years building your professional identity in a demanding field of work, and that especially values constant productivity and presence, you might end up asking yourself, well, who am I without this? And start feeling lost from that successful side of yourself if you were to let this go. Another reason we often default to just the job that we're in is worrying about what others will think. If you switched, let's say, out of science, it may look like you're less committed at what you do. We might worry what our colleagues and family might think when we pivot, or we might even risk looking ungrateful to all those people that took a chance on us and helped us get to where we are now. And getting a PhD, that's like what? Top 0.1% of the world that can do that. And so, yeah, there is a little bit of guilt when you think about maybe pivoting completely into something else that has nothing to do with your degree. Or you might worry about your financial stability if you were to move away from this more safe path. At least you have a job. At least it's clear why you deserve this job because it matches all of your training. But if you were to switch out of this job, even shifting positions can be so harrowing for us because as you move higher and higher in your degree and your training, fewer and fewer people are able to do what you do. You are essentially niching yourself in. So when you shift out of that, you can feel like an imposter and maybe that you're treading into somebody else's territory. A very common reason for default planning is just the inertia. It is so much easier to stay put. If you want to change, you're going to have to put in the time and energy to make that change. And sometimes the thought of that alone is just so overwhelming. And by the way, where should you even start? And a fifth really common reason is just going down the path because you started it. That is the sunk cost fallacy. That's the tendency to continue investing the time, energy, finances, other resources into something simply because you've already invested so much and you continue to do so even when it no longer aligns with your goals or your values. When you have every other reason to switch, you just think, well, I've already put in so much time. I don't want that to go to waste, so I'm going to continue down the path that I'm already on. It's this feeling that changing directions would mean that all of your past efforts were wasted. And the reality is that those investments are already spent, regardless of what you end up doing next. That is why it's called a fallacy. And there's actually a science-based reason why we're so prone to the sunk cost fallacy type of thinking. Our brains are evolutionarily wired to prioritize loss aversion over potential gains. That means that we are far more motivated to avoid losing what we have, whether that's our status, income, professional identity, you name it, than for us to actually pursue alignment with our values and our vision. And that is why life planning is so important, because it's this tangible reminder, not this abstract thing of wanting a meaningful life. We actually see the words put down on paper. Psychologically, losses weigh heavier on us and are more powerful than the things that we gain. I remember that when my son was in preschool, before we had started our homeschooling journey, I would go and pick him up from school and I would talk to the teacher and she would say, oh, he had such an amazing day. And she would lay out all these beautiful moments that occurred during the day for my son. And the funny thing is that then during the ride home, I would start chatting with him about how his day was at school and what happened. And what he would relay to me is the one bad thing that happened in the day. And that somehow weighed heavier in his mind than all of the good things that had happened in his day and that his teacher had communicated to me. But that's exactly what happens to us with sunk cost fallacy. And the other thing is that our amygdala, which partially serves as a risk detection system, and career uncertainty would fall under potential danger. And so when we have career uncertainty, that will trigger our stress response and we will go out of our way to try to feel safer by continuing down a known path, even if that path no longer serves us. Our neural wiring is literally designed to keep us on that familiar path, unless we consciously override it with intentional vision-based planning. And just like we had to train my son to separate out his negative experiences in the day and his positive experiences, and for him to sort of quantify that and see, well, the good outweighed the bad, in order to move on from default planning, you need to separate out the past investments that you made, which are not at all the same as your future vision. When you're planning what career path to follow, just remember that it's a journey down a path. It's not for you to think about once and then decide on it once. Your career is kind of like a long-term experiment. So default planning would be if you were to keep running the same protocol again and again because you already spent years on it. And even if the question no longer excites you or you have a lot of that question answered, you're still going to do the same thing. But as an experimenter in science, you will change your hypothesis as the data starts shifting. And doing so doesn't make you a failure. That's just good research practice. That's what you're supposed to do. Test and refine. that idea holds true for your career as well. Once you have done your 10 to 15 minutes of free writing on this journal prompt, I want to help you process that information. I want you to take your reflections and be able to turn that into self-awareness and potentially decision-making action. The first thing you want to do is to see if you're default planning. So now when you go back and reflect on what you've written in your journal, I want you to be able to look for signs that you might be default planning and delineate those from the things that you might be writing and speak towards your vision planning, the things that you're looking forward to. I want you to pay attention to the words and language, how you're talking to yourself. If you're saying things like, I should be grateful, a lot of women would kill for this job, well, that could be a sign that you're default planning. Your writing may also show evidence of some of the root causes that we talked about for default planning. So early in this episode, I shared 5 root causes for default planning, and some of those reasons may appear in your journal entry. So I want you to look for those. In many cases, they're actually assumptions you're making. You don't actually have evidence for that to be true or false yet. So for example, you might be worried about what others are thinking, when in actuality, you haven't even talked to anyone else about it and you don't know what their thoughts on the matter are. Another example is maybe you feel the inertia of just staying put because you're worried about if you shift careers, it'd be a completely new work culture and maybe it's difficult for you to integrate in something new like that. When in actuality, you haven't tried it yet, so you have no idea. You don't know if it's going to be hard or if it's going to be something better that you're going to like. And so while these are common reasons for default planning, they're actually based in assumption. And you might be able to identify that in your reflections. The next tip is to know your purpose. If you're not clear about that, then you're definitely going to want to get started with my Designed Life method. That's my one-on-one coaching program. As part of that program, you will be able to spend time on self-discovery exercises that help you uncover so many different parts of yourself, but also your purpose. You can go on and create a purpose statement, which is then going to be part of your life plan. So if that's where you need to start, then you're going to want to go to solveformom.com, book-life-planning, and get started by booking a first free call. The link to that call is also in the show notes. The reason you need to know your purpose is because that is part of your internal motivation. Which brings me to my next tip. I want you to look for those matches or mismatches between your internal motivation and your external output that we talked about. When things are aligned, you will feel excited about what you're working on and feel that fire of purpose on a daily basis. When there's a mismatch, you might start thinking about or talking about shifting or pivoting careers. But I do want to point out that identifying a mismatch doesn't mean that you automatically have to change your entire field of work. It could be something a little slight, like maybe just switching the position or the environment that you're in. So for example, maybe you could keep the same position, but move to another company, change up your environment, experience a different work culture. Or maybe you could get a different job with different roles and responsibilities, but stay in the same field of work, maybe even stay in the same company. If you're having trouble determining whether there's a mismatch, then you can really simplify it and just strip it down to the bare minimum and say, hey, if I were starting from zero today, would I choose this career again? And when you ask yourself that question, your response should be this knee-jerk response, and capture that as well in your journal. That will be one more piece of information to go along with any misalignment between your purpose and your current type of work right now. If you're finding that you're not completely satisfied with the career path that you're going down, you also want to determine which parts of your career are leading you to dissatisfaction. And so the tip is to break it down systematically by asking yourself, which parts of this job directly move me towards my long-term vision and which parts pull me away? By itemizing it this way, you're going to get a lot more clarity on which parts of your career are causing that tension, and if you were to pivot, what can you keep and what can you let go of? And the last tip that I want to share is to use your past reflections other journal entries and run it through another filter. See if those entries provide any additional clues and information about whether your career is aligned with your purpose. Which identity is your career supporting? An older identity, or does it continue to move you towards the vision that you have? So today's episode was really different because I was bringing you through a guided journal exercise. This prompt was really to drill down to ask whether your job matches your purpose in life. So we talked about what it means to be engaged in meaningful work and what can cause you to feel unfulfilled in your career. We talked about that mismatch in internal motivation and external output. I shared the journal question with you and why high-achieving moms in STEM can often end up default planning when it comes to their careers. I shared 5 root causes of default planning and how to identify when your actual work in your job doesn't match what your purpose in life is. This is so important because we know that you feel the most alive when your work actually helps you find purpose and solve the problems that you care about the most. When your day-to-day role doesn't match your bigger life vision, then when you experience quote-unquote success, it can actually feel really empty, even if your CV looks super polished and great. So this journaling exercise is going to get you really far down into answering this question and being able to move forward in an actionable way. But if you would like support beyond this episode, maybe you're realizing that your job and your life vision might not be a match and you're not sure what to do next, then I'd really love to help you map it all out. You can book that free alignment audit call with me, and I'll get you started on your life planning journey. When you click on the link in the show notes, you can actually sign up for that free call where I'm going to run an alignment audit and I can assess for you where you have these misalignments in your life, including in your career. This isn't just about you venting about any job dissatisfaction that you have or misalignments in your life. It's actually a place where we are going to build out a life plan. You will have a clear roadmap and know how to move forward. So the process does come with a lot of emotions, but we're not just going to sit in those emotions. We're going to do something. We're going to move forward and go forward despite these emotions like fear and guilt and frustration and overwhelm. With life planning, we will be able to turn that self-awareness from your journal exercise into a concrete, personalized roadmap where you're going to be able to build your version of a successful and balanced life, including any career changes if that's what you need to have more meaningful work and to reach your ideal life, one that lets you pursue those big goals and protect your family time. So thank you for spending your time with me today, and I want you to know that sometimes career planning can feel like you're swimming against the current. But you do have the power to own your own path and move forward with intention. So go out there and achieve your ambitious mom life.